Howdy, folks, and welcome to Tiny Tent Show number 14. Tonight's show is mostly of a piece as we revisit the great show 30th Star and a production that was put on in the late 90s. We're also going to take a little time in the middle to get a story or two out of Jack Gundersen, and I think you're really going to enjoy that. As always, during these times, we just want to say that everything we present here, we present acknowledging that things are changing fast. It's a time unlike any other time in most of our lifetimes. But nonetheless, we want to provide you with some diversion, with some joy, some music, and a few stories from Jack Gundersen as well. So welcome to Tiny Tent Show number 14. As I said, we're going to feature 30th Star. 30th Star was commissioned in 1997 to honor the sesquicentennial of Wisconsin. And it was a 2-hour, fully staged, illustrated musical history created by the Nelson Ferris Concert Company and produced by the Lake Superior Big Top Chautauqua. It was also the centerpiece of the 1998 season. During that year and in the year following, the BCO took the 30th Star program on the road and to many, if not most, of Wisconsin's major theaters. And they played to sold-out crowds and thousands of students as well in communities across Wisconsin. The show was, as Ed Willett put it, the show was a miracle of support and cooperation. There was state and federal support, and there were private donors involved as well, and then just the folks who turn out. And we never forget about those folks. We'll mention them at the end of the show today. But the end result was a show that really was one of the jewels in the crown of the state's celebration of its statehood. And so here we go now, a little flashback to 30th Star.
May 1848. President James Polk signs the bill accepting Wisconsin's Constitution. The 30th Star is sewn on the Union flag. Wisconsin joins the constellation, the United States of America. I'd have come to know the story before. It's where to go to find the old of it. You should go up to Wisconsin's attic. Up to Wisconsin's attic. All Wisconsin stuff up here. Stick your nose in the hat of another time. Old tools no longer used. Letters, maps, writings. Inventions, intentions of an older day. Place of understanding of what went on back then is up in Wisconsin's attic. Up in Wisconsin's attic. I'm just gonna snoop and dig around. See what there is to be found up here. Dust the memories and scrape the rust. And hold the souvenirs.
It's not to be as hard traveling these lakes as it was to be stuck like cattle in the hold for 9 weeks crossing the Atlantic. Oh, I think I'll sit and rest my sea legs. You don't know that I too have storms blowing over me every minute. What with our entire marriage in a trunk and our 2 lives in a bundle. And my mama, turning a fever the morning we left. Oh, will I ever see her again? And my sister, with her firstborn, that I delivered in the house our grandfather built. Oh. Well, over and over we have turned this ground and decided to plant a new life in this Wisconsin of America. We will make it home. Wherever we end. You are so strange to me sometimes. It's like I have to bleed you to know what you're thinking. And now here I am following you again and trying to hold us both up. And you, for 2 years, reading the letters home of your son saying, let's leave tomorrow, leave all in its place. Well, Papa, tomorrow has landed. Look at the day. Oh, look at the sky. Oh. Look at us. Read again the letters of your son. How they used to spring you.
Milwaukee, June 1847. Dear Mom and Papa, I pray all is well with you. My boots are brown with American soil, and I stand my soul in Wisconsin. This letter will be short, for tomorrow I leave on the Green Bay Road. On the ship I met a Yankee, and the gentleman gave me a job. Mama, the English you taught me is already standing me well. There are Germans all around me with only the mother tongue. And the Irish, Swiss, Polish, Italian, Scandinavian, and Dutch all step to the land. The Milwaukee Harbor is a forest of masts, and we're talking with our hands. I'm hired to lay a plank road, 16 wide-inch oak. 16 years, they say this will lay, a road for the wheels of these wagons that are rolling north and south from this port, and in dreams that lean to the west. Mama, I keep tight the money you sewed in the hide of this vest. I will write when I reach Green Bay. This Wisconsin territory is young and wild, and there's talk to make it a state. Your son, Willie.
I wish we could have brought all your tools with us. Packed the whole shed, for that matter. And once more, I who fed the horses would like to say good morning in the barn. Oh, even the colt with the wild eyes seemed to know we were leaving. And what do you say to your dog at the fence? Stay. Stay. Walk away. And my sister, holding him with all her... Stay. Oh, if only someone had said hard to us. Stay. All the tools of your trade can be bought in Milwaukee. Trust in your son and the emigrant book, which you have nearly worn the cover off of reading to me. Here. Who should be advised to emigrate?
All who have the desire, the strength, and endurance to take care of themselves in any situation, and who will not be ashamed to accept any kind of labor when necessary, even when unaccustomed to it. All who in Germany live under political or religious oppression and desire to free themselves therefrom.
That is us, Papa. Oh, but it's not the opportunities that I worry about. It's that cholera spread wild out of Chicago. And the whereabouts of our Willie.
The captain of Sultana calls all ticketed passengers to embark. All who are upbound for Lake Erie, Lake Huron, and Lake Michigan ports. 1 hour now to departure.
Dear Mom and Papa, so long since I've written, but I'm traveling to look around. From Green Bay, I made my way to the diggings southwest to the lead mining grounds. Up the Fox River to the Portage, down the Wisconsin to Prairie du Chien. At first sight of the great Mississippi, one knows why she's the queen. On the military road to Dodgeville, by stage then to Mineral Point. The miners dig like moles all week here, and Saturday boil into town. To the mansion house to stake their savings at poker or the roulette wheel. Badgers, they call them, that live in their caves and the mines and the sides of these hills. Mama, in Mineral Point, the wives shake rags to call their men. I remember you waving at Papa and me in the fields of our old home to come in. I could work here for Mr. Washburn, who's agent for the new let lands. But to make Milwaukee to meet you, I may haul lead by wagon. In Platteville, it's smelted, put into plats, a ton to each yoke of oxen. Well, 8 to 10 days to Milwaukee Overland, of the 4 lakes I'm anxious to see. Oh, in New York, the great city, watch for thieves. On the docks, they work in pairs. From Albany to Buffalo, well, take the train. It costs, but the Erie Canal is slow. This territory is voted for statehood, and close to the day you arrive, the 30th star will be sewn on the flag, and Wisconsin will join the Union. I pray your voyage is safe, and the revolution frees those who've stayed. Your son, Willie.
Do you see him anywhere, Papa?
No, he couldn't know of the storm and the 3 days out of Manitoba.
Oh, but he's here. I can feel it.
Well, over 800 people have landed today.
But he did a fine job describing the harbor and the 3 hills.
Could you be using a wagon and team?
was a wind of immigrants blowing east to west, over the sea, away to America. Away from all the dead ends of the long divided lands of Europe. Over America, away to Wisconsin. To the free homestead lands. To the cheap cut-over pine and railroad lands. The high tides of immigration came here in the 1880s and 90s. The landless came to this land. Goodbye to Sweden and Norway. I renounce forever all allegiance and fidelity to Oscar kings of Sweden and Norway. Goodbye to Russia. I renounce forever all allegiance and goodbye. Forever. A letter came with a steamship ticket. A bitter cup of coffee drunk in parting. The immigrant left and the home folks wept. Come our sailing day, come our sailing day.
Away to America in the morning winds. Here one life ends and another begins.
Will I ever see my father and my mother again? We're off to New Wisconsin.
Last night we slept on the king's old side.
Today our fate's in the palm of God.
9 weeks in this stinking ship.
We're stacked like cattle in the hold, hold on. We come off Ellis Island with a brand new name.
Thank God we're through and we're on this train to Buffalo where we get the boat
For the distant shores of Superior, come our sailing day. Come our sailing day.
I won't forget that first sweet hour. We set foot on a homestead claim. It was spring in the woods, were white with flowers. Between the stumps, this land was ours.
No worse off than our neighbors up the road. There was so little money and the land didn't pay. The men found work in the camps and the mills on the docks and the quarries in these iron Pinocchio hills.
That summer we put up the house and the barn. We're slaves all day to the axe and the hoe.
One for the beetle,
And one for the crow,
one for the cutworm.
one to grow.
At first we stopped in a mother tongue. Tradition would step and a song we kept. A memory close of the old country. But here we stood,
All new Americans.
Some of the old ways disappeared in that first hard long winter here. We shared our time and the strength in our hands. Help was a word that followed us around.
Come our
Sailing day,
come our
sailing day.
Here we
Said as we stepped ashore, we'll stay to the city as we did before. The neighbors cling like family, school in the books of the old country.
We came over in a colony, all together, all to be free.
We come over in a settlement to the betterment of our children. The heydays faded.
Some left.
some stayed.
Out of the people a state was made, in the shade of the schemes and the dreams we raised.
This land's in your hands now.
Come our sailing day, come our sailing day, come our sailing day, come our sailing day.
The 30th star sewn on the Union flag. E pluribus unum, out of the many, one.
On the Wisconsin flag, the story of the territory before, the sailor, the miner, the anchor and the arm, the pick and the shovel, the cornucopia horn of plenty, the plow, and the badger under the state motto, forward. The badger looks like he's going backwards to me. Our motto,
The photograph, Invented in 1839 by Louis Daguerre. Daguerreotypes, they were called, tintypes. The oldest known photograph in Wisconsin's biggest attic, the State Historical Society in Madison, is this daguerreotype of the first governor, taken in the year of statehood, 1848, Nelson Dewey. Good evening, Governor. Wouldn't be until 1878 when Tom Edison invented the process to record the human voice by the cylinder that, looking back, as a historian, you could match the sound of a voice to the paper look of the soul. This is John Pigeon, Menominee. The Menominee are the oldest continual residents of what would become Wisconsin. 3,000 years at least, it is said. Pigeon was born when Wisconsin became a state. His dream song was recorded on cylinder by Francis Dinsmore in the late 1920s when he was an elder. He sang on the radio. He wanted these songs remembered.
The word Wisconsin is a turning into English of a Native American word naming the home river. Out of which tribe or language, nobody knows for sure. One strong guess is Ojibwa, Mescousin.
Marquette, French explorer priest, who with Joliet paddled up the Fox River and down the Wisconsin, was first to write it down. Wisconsin. On June 17, 1673, it is said they discovered the upper Mississippi. Excuse me, the Mississippi had long been paddled. Europeans called this the New World. Excuse me, this was an old world to native peoples. 15,000 years ago, humans lived here at the glacier's edge.
The search for a northwest passage to China led to the French discovery of Wisconsin. Contact. 1634, Jean Nicolet, sent by Champlain, governor of New France, stepped ashore at Red Bank's Green Bay, Lake Michigan, wearing silks. The Ho-Chunk, the Winnebago, must have jumped when they heard for the first time the thunder of two pistols that Nicolet declared himself with. And who could have known that 200 years later, lead, the shot that Nicolet blew into the air, would lead to the rush to Wisconsin, to a mining rush, and to the treatying of Indian lands.
Nicolet met the Menominee on this trip. Lost in the count of winters are the human beings whose traces come to light in the thousands of archaeological sites. Mounds, villages, tools, and weapons found around and up and down Wisconsin.
So Green Bay was first for the landing. But the outpost crown of New France was placed on top of Wisconsin at La Pointe, Madeline Island, Michael's Island, Le Bay de Saint-Esprit, Bay of the Holy Ghost, Chequamegon Bay. 1659, Pierre Esprit Radisson and Médard Sud de Grossier leave Montreal, the King's Depot, without license for Lac Superior. At the end of this bay we landed, that far and beautiful country.
return, Radisson and Glossier were arrested, but in their Montreal canoe was a cargo of furs worth $120,000 that opened wide the eyes of the French court traders to profit. And it was then the Jesuits began packing their Bibles for their black-robed missionarying west by water. The fur trade was Wisconsin's business for the next 200 years. For the French, then the English, then the Americans, the great game of exchange with all Wisconsin tribes on all waters. This, a beaver pelt, was a wealth, and over its fur was paddled the song of the voyageurs.
Mon revenant de la jolie Rochelle,
Mon revenant de la jolie Rochelle,
j'ai rencontré trois jolies demoiselles.
c'est l'aviron qui nous mène, c'est l'aviron qui nous mène à haut.
J'ai rencontré trois jolies demoiselles.
J'ai rencontré trois jolies demoiselles.
J'ai pas choisi, mais j'ai pris la plus belle.
C'est l'aviron qui nous mène, c'est l'aviron qui nous mène à haut.
J'ai pas choisi, mais j'ai pris la plus belle.
J'ai pas choisi, mais j'ai pris la plus belle.
Je l'ai vu monter derrière moi sur ma selle.
C'est l'aviron qui nous mène, c'est l'aviron qui nous mène à haut.
Je l'ai fait monter derrière moi sur ma selle.
Je l'ai fait monter derrière moi sur ma selle.
J'ai fait son lien, son palais avec elle.
C'est l'aviron qui nous mène, c'est l'aviron qui nous mène à haut.
Mon revenant de la jolie Rochelle,
Mon revenant de la jolie Rochelle,
j'ai rencontré trois jolies demoiselles.
c'est l'aviron qui nous mène, c'est l'aviron qui nous mène à haut.
If Madison is where the heart of the body politic beats now, do you know where the old heart of Wisconsin is? Do you know the old Wisconsin heart? The old heart, the old Wisconsin heart, beats in a two-step pace at the portage, at the carrying place.
Famous to all native travelers, then to the voyageurs. Le portage. Then to the English who won claim to this land by the French and Indian War. And then to the Americans, the portage is a path between the Fox and Wisconsin rivers. Englishman George Festineau used it in 1835.
At 8 a.m., I bade adieu to the officers of the garrison. Turning my back on the waters of the Atlantic, I crossed the portage and advanced to those that empty themselves into the Gulf of Mexico. The portage was a dead flat of black mud and sand, measuring exactly 2,650 paces. It took me exactly 28 minutes to walk across it.
28 minutes of land between the connecting waters of the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. 1.4 miles. The last glacier here wound the water so. The Ho-Chunk were living there at Contact. Wawona, the place where one takes up his canoe and carries it on his shoulders. All those we know by name used it. The Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Ojibwa, Sioux, Sac and Foxes, Miami, Huron, Kickapoo, Ottawa, Mascoutins, Potawatomi, Iowa, Illinois, and all before.
You say they have all passed away, but their name is on your water, and we may not wash it out. You say they have all passed away, but their name is
River begin at the portage and run north to Green Bay. The Wisconsin rolls southwest to Prairie du Chien to meet the Mississippi. Go there. Pull off that roaring Freeway 51 and stop at the portage. Go to know it under the concrete, what is now called Wanna Trail. An ordinary-looking street in Portage, Wisconsin. Backyard grills and pickup trucks and TV antennas and lawns is a footpath 15,000 years old.
Can you hear feet rustling in the marsh grass? Fresh out of the fox, a canoe, dripping in the glistening afternoon. And are you listening for the children laughing in the hot mosquito buzzing August brand new carrying day? You say they have all passed away, but their name is underwater, and we may not wash it out.
3 American forts stood the Fox, Wisconsin waterway just before the territory. Fort Howard at Green Bay. Oh, the stories there we could listen to, but we can't stay. Fort Winnebago at the Portage, and the Indian Agency House built 1832 still standing, as are the fort's surgeon's quarters. You can walk the old look-through. And Fort Crawford at Prairie du Chien.
The portage traffic was heavy in August 1825. All Wisconsin tribes called to Fort Crawford a council, a treaty arranged by Lewis Cass and William Clark of Lewis and Clark. No land ceded, but boundaries drawn to make peace between warring tribes, 2,000 there of 9 nations.
It's not long after. They will lose almost all of what was drawn then. It was called treatying. There are 2 little words inside the state name Wisconsin, which sum up the government's grabbing of Indian lands. Con and sin.
The last conflict east of the Mississippi was known as the Black Hawk War. Black Hawk and his Sauk people living on the Rock River were delivered an order to move west of the Mississippi by a whiskey-soaked treaty made in St. Louis that he never signed. He was never even there. 15 million acres of Wisconsin, Illinois, and Missouri sold for $2,274.50. His people were forced west and then crossed the Mississippi back to their old gardens. The chase from the first fight at Wisconsin Heights ended at the mouth of the Bad Axe River on August 2nd, 1832. U.S. troops and the steamboat Warrior ignored the Sauk surrender flag and massacred 160 warriors, and as many women, children, and elders were shot crossing the Mississippi. It was over.
He say they have all passed away, but their name is underwater, and we may not wash it out. You say they have all passed away, but their name is underwater, and we may not wash it out.
The 30th Star. We're going to get back to more of that show here in just a little bit. But first, I'm going to take some time to have a conversation with one of the long-standing members of the BCO, original member, a guy named Jack Gundersen. Many of you know him. I say we're going to have a conversation. That is not completely accurate for a couple of reasons. Number one being both Jack and I have what we call the Hinternet. And so he was having a hard time hearing me, and occasionally his image would freeze up and I couldn't hear or see him. But the good news is that I called it a conversation. It was a kind of a conversation, but the deal with Jack is, and the good news is, in a case like this, if you just ask him one question, you probably don't have to ask another question for 45 minutes. And so, despite the fact that I had some technical difficulties, Jack told some wonderful stories about how he came to be part of the BCO, and I think you're just going to enjoy hearing what he had to say. So here he is, Jack Gundersen.
To begin with, I grew up out in western Minnesota. I spent my first 2 years in college at the branch campus of the University in Morris, Minnesota, which is handy because it's 20 miles from where I live. And I did my first 2 years there. It probably would have finished, except for in I guess it was the spring of the year of my sophomore year. We're in this tiny little 2-story red brick ivy covered little music building, and by the second year there were only 2 of us left in the music major class, so we met in the professor's office. And, anyway, there was a flyer on the bulletin board in the hallway that said free scholarships available for the Meadowbrook School of Music in Rochester, Michigan this summer. The Detroit Symphony was the resident orchestra. Robert Shaw was going to be the choral director, and college students and high school choral directors and things like that could apply to go to this school. It said all you have to do was send in a tape recording of 2 songs. So I thought, well, why not? Friend of mine, Ken Beck, who I was in a folk trio with, he was from Morris. He went on to retired as a sales rep for Dell Computers. He's worth many millions of dollars. Anyway, he brought us reel-to-reel tape recorder out there. And I recorded 2 songs and sent them in, didn't think anything more of it. Well, lo and behold, I get a letter saying, well, congratulations, you have a scholarship for the summer to go to the Meadowbrook School of Music in Michigan. So great. I caught a ride with a woman from Michigan who was going out there anyway. We rode out in her little red VW Beetle, and she delivered me there. And it was a magical summer. I was in hog heaven, we're singing Beethoven with Robert Shaw conducting, and met all these wonderful people out there and stuff. And so one of my voice teacher was a guy named Blake Stern from Yale University. And he said, well, so what kind of voice teacher do you have out there at that Morris campus that you're going to? And I said, well, my voice lesson consisted of being in the little practice room with an accompanist at the piano, and this woman with jet black hair, short red dresses, black nylons, and red high heels would sit in the corner smoking Pall Mall straights while I was singing, and then say, sing that again. She didn't know squat about teaching voice. I told that to Blake, sir, and he said, you got to get your butt out of that school and get to a decent school that's got a voice department. Just a chance thing that happened. One of the other guys in the music department was a year or 2 older than me and said, say, I work in one of these nightclubs in town here, these supper club singing groups at night. Go to school in the daytime. I make enough money to pay my tuition, my rent and stuff, and Sextet, which he sang in, and I auditioned for the Edgewater 8, which was the group I ended up in. I auditioned, didn't hear anything, got a job with 2 knuckleheads from Nevis, Minnesota, spending 11 hours a day picking rocks. Road construction. So that was my gig, right? And I had left the phone number of the cafe bar restaurant place in Akeley, this tiny little place, just in case anybody called, because I was staying with my parents in their trailer house. They didn't have a phone. So one morning we go out at 7 o'clock, like every morning. The foreman tells us if we're going to work or not, because if it had rained, it was too wet, which happened that particular day. He said, well, too wet to work today, boys. Go back to town. So we go back to this little cafe restaurant, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. And this guy said, anybody in this group called Jack Gundersen? Yeah, I said, it's me. He said, some guy from Minneapolis called. Wants you to call him back right away, as soon as you can. So I call up this guy, and this fellow told me that his name was Harry Schultz. So he answers the phone. I said, "Hello, Harry," and he says, "The name is Gary." So he was a super uptight, hard drinking, pill gobbling director. He was a brilliant director, but he was like this, you know. And he said, "Would you like it? We'd like you to come back in and audition again. One of our guys is leaving. It's Tom Netherton, who ended up on the Lawrence Welk show and stuff. He's about a head taller than everybody else, blonde guy. Been drafted, and we need to replace him. You know, 4 guys, 4 girls." I said, "Oh, okay. We want you to come back in and audition." So when do you want me to come? He said, "Now." So I go to my parents, grab my suitcase and throw some stuff in there. And I said, "I may not be back." So I get down there and go into their rehearsal over on the Seven Corners area of the West Bank of the university, up at the upstairs of an old time vaudeville theater that they held their rehearsals in. And so I auditioned again, and Gary Schultz says, "Well, welcome to the Edgewater 8. There's the music and there's your chair." And so for 3.5 years, 6 nights a week, 14 shows a week, I think it was. We changed shows about every 3 or 4 weeks or so. I did that while I went to school. I stretched out my last 2 years into 3 years so I could. And on $66 a week, I was able to pay my rent, pay my school fees, and bought a car, a new car for $2,700 and some bucks, and made payments on $66 a week. But it was a life-altering experience. We had a full-time choreographer, full-time director, full-time costumer, full-time musical arranger, and we're managed by an agency, that the Al Sheehan Agency, who also managed and hired the acts for the outdoor theater show in Medora, North Dakota. And the spring of '67, Warren Nelson comes to town. He's going to the university with his folk group from Fairmont to audition for the summer gig in Medora, which they got. So between then and the summer, when they left, they rehearsed in the same building that we did. And so Warren and I got to know each other. We were commuting together from the university and stuff. And they asked him, we were going to be doing a 1920 show, and they said, "We need a banjo player for the 1920 show. You're a banjo player." And he said, "Yeah." So, well, we need a banjo player, but it was a 1920s show with the old 4-string plectrum style banjo, you know, where they needed somebody to play the song Whispering, da 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 dee da 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 da, that song. And so you have to play it like this. But he didn't know how to play that to save his ass, you know. And Frankie, the piano player, was aware of that. The director kept saying, "How come you're not playing?" "Oh, I'm having trouble with I think it needs new strings, you know," because they furnished him with a really nice banjo. And so anyway, so in the meantime, he was staying up till the wee hours every night, cramming, trying to learn how to play that thing. And so by the time the show opened, he could play it. So he played it for that one show. It's the only show he did with us for a few weeks. And he said, "Okay." He said, "We're off to Medora this summer." He said, "If you ever quit the Edgewater 8, call me. You can come sing in our group." So when I got out of school, I had to quit the Edgewater because I took a teaching job at the elementary school I'd taught at. I didn't care for that all that much. I had 660 elementary kids twice a week. 6 sixth grades, 6 fifth grades, 6 fourth grades, and half the third grades. It was chaos. So I called him up during that school year, and I said, "Is the offer still good?" "Yeah, we're just, we're singing during vacations, and on weekends we're doing college concerts and stuff. Come on down to Fairmont, start rehearsing." So I did. Went down to Fairmont, and that's how that all started.
Wow.
So that year we concertized, and after I was done teaching that first year, I said, "No, that's not for me. I'd rather be performing." So then we ended up, touring and gigging that summer of it was 1969, I guess. And that was the year that we ended up playing in Vegas for the month of August. You know that story? We got heard by our manager, brought in a guy from Vegas, from LA, who ended up being hooked up with the mob. We didn't know it at the time. But he brought him out to hear us at a place called the Shakopee House in Shakopee. And, there were 10 of us, 3 women. And, we were doing like Fifth Dimension and Peter, Paul and Mary and all that kind of stuff, And this guy really liked us after our manager had bought him enough drinks and dinner and stuff. Guy said, I'm going to go make a phone call. I'll be right back. So he makes a phone call. He comes back and he said, well, congratulations, kids. You're going to be playing at the grand opening of the International Hotel in Las Vegas for the month of August this year. So here you go. Go out and get some costumes and stuff like that. So we played a month on a schedule from 7 p.m. to 4 a.m., 1 hour on, 3 hours off. We rotated with a country group from Texas, and then Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders. He was kind of like a white Elvis, with the pompadour hair and the fancy clothes. And Ike and Tina Turner in the review with this huge band. And opening at the same time and for the entire month next door in the main theater was Elvis Presley, who hadn't been in front of an audience in 9 years. We thought we died and gone to heaven, because we could sneak in and go watch his show whenever we wanted, he'd sneak backstage and come stand with us behind the curtains and watch Tina Turner and the Ikettes flaunting their stuff around, So we ended up touring around the country, and stuff, and this international agency that we ended up signing with because of this guy, it soured because they started plugging us into clubs that weren't right for us. We'd make these hellacious drives to go from here to there, and they were just filling in the calendar, and stuff. And more than once, the club owners would get mad and say, "This is no rock and roll band. You told me they were a rock and roll band. Get them out of here." So that soured, and we were getting kind of tired of that routine. So our last gig was out in the Cape Cod at the Sheraton Hyannis. We show up there, and we said, "Where would you like us to set up?" There was a band on the main floor, and the main floor bar was a Chicago cover band. And they said, "Well, you're upstairs in that ballroom." So we go up there. There's this tiny little stage with a little white picket fence and plastic flowers around it, and there's 10 of us that are supposed to go on this stage. So they said, "Well, you can set up there." And so we did. Of course, nobody ever came up there, because there's the Chicago band in the main floor, and outside in front of the Sheraton was a tent like our Chautauqua tent, with Count Basie and Tony Bennett playing. Wow. So nobody came to see us. So then once again, the club owner says, "Yeah, your kids are done." We lasted a few days, and he said, "You're out of here," So we bagged it after that. We said, that's enough of that. So that was the end of that. And then, during the interim, then I went back to the cities and gigged and did stuff. And Warren went out to Colorado, and I would go out and visit them once in a while, him and Don Pavel, and they were living in the mountains. And then along comes the Martin County Hornpipe, the very first one of the illustrated kind of historical musicals that we did down in Fairmont. And we all gathered for that. First time we ever met Bruce Bowers, and Don Pavel brought him along from Colorado. And so that was the first of those. And then there were the Madison Days in the late 70s. I used to commute down to Madison and play Wednesday nights at Potts Inn across Plains with the Lost Nation String Band. It was Burnside, Pavel, Warren Nelson, and Cal Altman at the time. And then I eventually started playing bass more, and it was going through a divorce and stuff, so it was a good time to get out of town. So I slid down to Madison and moved in with Warren and Betty for a while, and then Burnside was up here, living up north here. And he was a little tired of making the commute down to Madison to play gigs, so he started booking the band up here. There's all these little clubs we could play around this area, And so we started coming up, and in the fall of 1980, Don and I and Warren looked at each other and said, it's pretty cool up there by Washburn and Bayfield and stuff. A lot of cool people, a lot of artists, musicians, spotters, painters and stuff. It's beautiful up there. And rents are a lot cheaper than they are in Madison. Let's go up, try it out for a while, see how we like it. So that was October of 1980, and I guess we like it. We haven't left yet.
Well, I love that. And I think what I'd like to transition to now is just a quick little bit. The show today, of course, is focusing on the 30th Star Tour that happened in 1990.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just a couple of sentences quickly recalling what that was like, that experience.
It was, that was a wonderful experience. I think we toured something like 13 cities around the state with that show.
Wow.
It was really fun, and people loved it because, up around here, the shows are about like Bayfield and Washburn, and that they're individualized that way. But this was about the entire state.
Mm-hmm.
All these wonderful stories of characters and events and all these kind of things. So it was, and we played, I think it was something like a total of close to 30,000 school kids with that show.
Amazing.
Around the state, elementary kids, high school kids. So it's a great way. I've always thought it's a great way to teach history to young people with images and music and fun, laughter, comedy. That's stuff that we do, like we do our Ole and Sven and Lena bits, and we do our comedic things, and stuff like that. So yeah, it was great fun.
Well, thanks for taking us down a little bit of the back roads of how you wound up here.
I tend to put on a lot of miles on the back roads, Michael.
Yes. And
I get lost, but I come back around.
That's perfect. No, I appreciate the time. Jack Gundersen. And I'll tell you what, folks, he was just getting started. So there's a whole show's worth of stories from Jack alone, and I hope we get a few more down the road. Right now, we're gonna head back to that classic performance of the 30th Star.
Once upon the northern two-thirds of the state stood the finest stands of white pine found anywhere on earth. Trees in the great forest were commonly 160 feet high, some 200, which was also their age. And a tree that had taken 200 years to mature was chopped or sawn and trimmed by the swampers in less than an hour.
All for the mills. And Wisconsin not only had the pine, but the water courses to roll and raft it to market. The logging had started around cities like Fond du Lac, Oshkosh, the Sawdust City, and Big Bull Falls, Wausau. Stepped west and north 40 by 40, by 1900, the pine was gone. And wild towns like Hurley and Rhinelander emptied.
Voices all along have been raised at the waste and clear cutting. As early as 1867, the legislature set up a committee. And Increase Lapham, scientist and scholar, set out a 100-page report of the disastrous effects of the destruction of forest trees now going on so rapidly in the state of Wisconsin. Over the roar of the sawmills, no one could or would hear it.
The Chippewa River Valley alone contained 1/6 of all the pine timber west of the Appalachians. Knapp Stout and Company of Menominee was the largest lumber company in the world in the 1870s. On the backs of the lumberjacks, fortunes were made.
Hey, young man. Fresh back from the Civil War. New in your boots in Wisconsin. Looking for a job? I got one for you. How about Hayward? Tell you what, hours are good too. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Pay $1 a day. Grab another end of this. Meet me tomorrow morning, about dawn. This is the cross-cut saw. Cut down the great forests of northern Wisconsin. This was the crudest and oldest of the tools, of course. It had a more popular name in its day, known as the Misery Whip, by those who used it. Well, if that wasn't to your liking, you can always become a river pig. River driving saw logs, grab this peavy. Young man, I'll see you Monday morning. I want to lay me down to sleep, where the grayback lice and the bed bugs creep. And if I should die before I wake, you go to Eau Claire and you blow my steak.
Roll out your dead bodies, it's daylight in the swamp.
Gather round, you townies, blow the Gabriel horn.
Through the woods that stood here before you was born.
We're gonna tell tall tales in the skidway back.
To the Wild Willie days of the lumberjack.
Come November in the Grand Dam.
Say goodbye till April, hike to the camp.
Cutting for the mainstay deep in the snow.
For the timber pig at the logging show.
$1 a day, cross cut, misery whip, white pine.
Bunkhouse, cougar den, cootie cage flap.
Get up, it's daylight in the swamp.
To the cook shack where they shoot the beans.
Slinging hash and stovelets, don't chew, hurry.
And give her snooze up the go back road.
All road my gas and now we got a load.
Clear cut, get out, move out the line.
To the next big 40, on into pine.
Sky hooker, stacking up a show load, white pine.
Every town got a mill, every mill got a crew.
Who gotta get logs to do what they do?
Some steaming in on the narrow gauge.
Some floating in a raft across the lake.
Some roll that river on a logging drive.
Dance another water, make a driver come alive.
Pork pine bobbing in the mill pond.
Backpole PD, feed him to the gang saws.
Eau Claire up where the Chippewa falls, cutting it down for the company town. Timber!
The white pine here was #1 clear.
There new big cities up far and near.
They said 100 years this pine would last.
Wasn't 20 gone by, the time was past.
Spring comes singing as the camp broke up.
Jack's running to town, come up and see me, boys.
Oh yeah, then a little
Hey, mate.
Shoot ball face whiskey, gonna blow my steak.
Jenny boys, I'll close the door. Can't hear the walking boss no more. $1 a day, cross cut, misery whip, white pine.
My name is William Williams, born in Cornwall. I've been a miner since I was 8. I worked Hell's Gate in New York Harbor before coming to the Nori mine. I worked the whole Go-Gibbick range, Ironwood, Hurley to Mellon. Well, it's a midnight tale in the first day's light, how we sent the Bessemer Rock off to Ashland. Well, it was old Nat Moore stumbled on the oar, started the rush and the wild speculation. Well, it was known before that the time had come. Iron was king, and the Cleveland mills were roaring for the ore. Work your way up, down in the hole, take a little out, and timber as you go. Stand aside! The captain cried, come a tram car by, 2 trammers to the bucket, and up! the shaft of those days when the hematite paid, and we were all wearing the candle.
See me there too, with my sisters in the crew. Lower us, there's digging to do. 1,000 feet down.
In the drift, in the shaft, down the tunnel come a blast. Through a new wall at the Ashland mine. In the snow, in the cold, the open pit. In the mud, in the clay. Can't say I liked it. Ore made iron, iron made steel. Steel made a nation. How did Ashland feel when iron made Ashland the queen of the lake? To the great ore freighters who came here to take from the 4 ore docks, each a quarter-mile long. The raw red rock been railroaded on. 3 Chicago Northwestern Wanna-Sioux line song from the ore dock buckets. Come and get it. First of the 4 docks. On the ice in the winter cold, heave-ho, raise it! The boss says double time. First door train come up from the race, July 14, 20 cars on the shelf. Up the trestle approach, up the grade. Switch engine, put 'em in place for dumping up above. I was an ore puncher, punching rock in the ore dock pockets for Chicago Northwestern. I was an ore trimmer, level of the stone load, way down in the ship's hold. I remember way back to the whaleback days, the big boats stirring up mud in the rain. I could tell this when the Sulaks grew and the new bulk freighters come easing on into the landing. Ore made iron, iron made steel, steel made a nation. How did Ashland feel when iron made Ashland the queen of the lake? To the Great Lake freighters who came here to take from the 4 ore docks, each a quarter-mile long. The raw red rock bed railroaded on. 3 Chicago Northwestern Wanna-Sioux line song from the ore dock pockets. Come and get it. Come and get it.
We're going to close the show the way we began it, with a letter home to Germany. This letter was written by George Fromater from Jefferson, Wisconsin, dated January 15, 1847.
You, dear friends, good night. I have accomplished the voyage and have come to a good land. I thank God for this way of getting a free life. I have much wood and good land. Were you here, you would have it too. I live here happily and wish you could have it the same way. Good night, all you friends.
What shall we leave our children to live on? And what shall we give our children to dream by? Leave a deep garden with clean waters blue to their children's children and their children too.
From Mother Mississippi to the Lake Michigan shore, from the Prairies' south bottom line to the Great Superior, from the valley of the St. Croix to Red Bank's Green Bay, in the Long Island song, in the long view of the day.
In the coulees, in the driftless, the cattle mooring across the sun prairie to the sand central plains, up north to the big woods, in the shadow of their stand, under all our thunder, always the land.
Wisconsin,
Down the home river, winding in time, a long reel gold that gave a name to our landing, to the ground under Wisconsin, my home.
Let the winter come,
Let the wind blow the snow.
let the spring come sing.
Let the summer go slow.
The road ditches blossom, the wild
lose the now of the hour. Like the geese rising from horrid marsh, lifting to leave, filling the sky. We land here, stop over for just a short time. Like the winged ones above us, we are just a flyby.
We have come now here to a new carrying place, a new century. We are all turning to. Let's just haul it all over. All that we are, portage the light of the 30th star. Wisconsin, Wisconsin, down the home river, winding in time, a long way I'll go. River that gave a name to our landing, to the ground under Wisconsin. The ship of state launched 1848 on the Union flag flying. Count up to where we are sailing on together on this good ship, Wisconsin, under the 30th star. Under the 30th star. In the wake of all those come and gone before us, we are all immigrants just landed here. This the shore of our time. This land here I see. Same harbor home to you and me. This is your and my time to shine under the 30th star. This ship of state launched 1848 on the Union flag flying. Count up to where we are sailing on together on this good ship, Wisconsin, under the 30th star. The ship of state launched 1848 on the Union flag flying. Count up to where we are sailing on together on this good ship, Wisconsin, under the 30th star. Under the 30th star.
Well, folks, that's our Tiny Tent show for tonight. Now, as much as at any time, we thank you for your time and your attention and your support as well. And thanks for taking care of your neighbors right now. It's a time to think about your neighbors and to be there for them. We appreciate those of you who are making our lives easier. We especially want to thank our sponsors, of course. Star North Cornucopia, Brownstone Pharmacy in Washburn, Peggy and Sheldon Goldberg, Anonymous Friends from Sedona, Arizona, Big Top Friends, the Bujolds, the Manleys, the Sandstroms, and the Roths, Movement Matters in Bayfield, Wisconsin, Memorial Medical Center, and Myra Einert, Sandy and Dick Olson. And now the time has come not to bid you adieu or say goodbye, but rather to do as we've always done around these parts and just say, well, I suppose. Forward.